She was born into the most glamorous family on earth and raised in a fairy tale that the whole world watched. But behind the palace gates, Princess Caroline of Monaco has buried more grief than most people survive once. And in 2026, a new loss has quietly reopened wounds that never fully closed. The woman behind the crown.
The tiny Principality of Monaco, because 5 years ago, it was the 700th anniversary of a royal family.
Most people who know the name Princess Caroline know the surface version, the elegant woman at the Rose Ball. She was the patron of the arts and the eldest daughter of Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier III. The grandmother at the center of a growing Grimaldi family that fills the palace steps every national day with children and grandchildren, and the particular warmth of a dynasty that has survived things dynasties rarely survive. On the 23rd of January, 2026, she turned 69 years old. The Monaco Tribune marked the occasion with a careful catalog of her year. The exhibition openings, graduation ceremonies, and cultural appointments. The inauguration of a media library bearing her name. The announcement of the first female musical director in the history of the Monte Carlo Philharmonic Orchestra was a historic appointment she personally oversaw. By every visible measure, she is a woman in full command of her life and her purpose. Composed, committed, present. But the visible measure is never the whole story with Princess Caroline. It has never been the whole story, because underneath the cultural commitments, public appearances, and the graceful aging of a woman who has always known how to carry herself in front of a camera, there was more. She had a private account of loss so heavy that most people, told the full list of it, would struggle to understand how one person absorbed it all and kept going. She lost her mother violently and without warning when she was 25 years old. She buried a husband she loved at 33, leaving her with 3 children under the age of 7. She has spent decades in a marriage that exists in name only. And in January of 2026, just days before her birthday, a man from the earliest and most painful chapter of her romantic life died quietly in Madrid.
Of her decision to divorce her husband, he admitted having an affair with a striptease artist.
His name was Philippe Junot. He was her first husband. The world moved on from that marriage almost as soon as it ended. It lasted 2 years. It was dismissed in most histories of the Grimaldi family as a youthful mistake, seen as a cautionary tale, the kind of romantic error that a 21-year-old girl makes when she is very young and sheltered. But here is what that framing misses. Philippe Junot was not just a mistake in Caroline's past. He was the first man she chose entirely on her own. The first major act of independence in a life that had been shaped by duty and expectation from the moment she was born. The marriage failed. The failure was public and humiliating, and the lessons she took from it shaped every decision she made about love and trust for the rest of her life. When he died on the 8th of January, 2026, peacefully in Madrid, surrounded by his children from a later marriage, it closed a chapter that most people assumed had been closed for decades. But grief does not follow the timelines that outsiders assign to it. And for a woman who has lost as many people as Princess Caroline has lost, the death of even an estranged chapter of your past carries its own particular weight. This is the story of what that weight actually looks like, not the version the palace communicates. It was not the carefully managed public image of a serene and cultured princess fulfilling her duties with grace and consistency. The real version, the one that starts with a Hollywood actress who married a prince and raised a daughter to believe that the world was a safe and beautiful place. And the version that documents, one loss at a time, exactly what happened, even as the world proved otherwise. To understand any of it, you have to start where Caroline's story actually starts, not in Monaco or in the palace, but in a car on a cliff road, on the 14th of September, 1982. With a mother who was never supposed to die that way. Grace Kelly's daughter and the weight of that name. Grace Kelly did not plan to die on that road. She had made the drive before. The winding route from the family's country home at Rock Aigle down into Monaco was familiar. She knew every curve. She had taken it dozens of times over the decades she had lived in the Principality as its princess, its first lady. The American movie star had traded Hollywood for a palace and spent the rest of her life making that trade look effortless. On the 13th of September, 1982, She got into the car with her youngest daughter, Stephanie, and began the drive home. At some point on the descent, something went wrong. The car left the road. It plunged off the cliff. Stephanie survived with injuries. Grace Kelly did not. She died the following day, the 14th of September, 1982, at the age of 52. The cause was a stroke, believed to have occurred while she was driving, which caused her to lose control of the vehicle. Caroline was not in the car. She was 25 years old when she received the news. There is no gentle way to absorb the death of your mother, but there are degrees of difficulty. And receiving the news that your mother's car had gone off a cliff was not easy. Hearing that your younger sister was in the seat beside her, that one survived and one did not, is the kind of news that fractures something in a person in a very specific way. Not just grief, guilt. The kind of survivor's guilt that attaches itself not to the person who was there, but sometimes to the person who was not. The one who was spared had the choice of who got to live. Caroline never spoke about that particular dimension of it publicly. She was raised, as she once said in an interview, with a sense of duty and obedience that put what she had to do before what she wanted. And what she had to do, almost immediately after burying her mother in the Cathedral of St. Nicholas in Monaco, was become her father's partner in everything Grace had been. Prince Rainier said it himself the following year. He told reporters that a miracle had happened after Grace's death, that Caroline had stepped into her mother's shoes, and she had the same spirit, that the way she was handling everything he had given her was a source of great satisfaction to him. A source of great satisfaction. His wife was dead. His eldest daughter was 25 years old, and his summary of what followed was that she was handling her new responsibilities satisfactorily. That single quote tells you more about the world Caroline grew up in than almost anything else in the historical record. Grief was not something the Grimaldi family performed in public. Loss was absorbed and converted into duty. The palace kept its schedule. The charities kept their calendars. And Princess Caroline, 25 years old and motherless, kept showing up. She took over the Princess Grace Foundation, which supported young artistic talent around the world. She stepped into the chairmanships, patronages, and ceremonial roles that her mother had held. She became, in the language of the Monaco press office, the First Lady of the Principality, the one who stood beside her father at official functions, smiled at the cameras, wore the clothes, and carried the name forward. What she did not do, and what nobody around her seemed to think was necessary, was stop. There was no period of withdrawal. No announced retreat from public life while she processed the loss of a parent who was also an icon. She was also the most famous woman in Monaco's history, and the person Caroline had measured herself against for as long as she could remember. None of that was permitted by the role she had inherited, and the role was about to demand even more from her. 2 years after her mother's death, Caroline found the kind of love she had been searching for since the Junot marriage collapsed. She found it in a young Italian businessman with blonde hair, a speedboat, and a laugh that people who knew him still describe decades later with a kind of wonder. His name was Stefano Casiraghi, and for 6 years, he gave her something she had not had since childhood. He gave her a reason to stop performing and simply be happy. The question that no one who loved him could ever fully answer afterward was why it lasted so short a time. The marriage that should never have happened before Stefano Casiraghi, there was Philippe Junot. And before Philippe Junot, there was a 20-year-old princess who had spent her entire life being told what her future was supposed to look like. A royal marriage, a suitable partner, someone whose background, character, and intentions had been vetted and approved by the palace before she was ever allowed to feel anything about them. Caroline was not interested in any of that. She met Philippe Junot in the late 1970s when she was 19 years old, and he was 36. He was a Parisian venture capitalist with a reputation that preceded him everywhere he went. He was charming, well-connected, and socially fearless. He was absolutely nothing like the kind of man Prince Rainier and Princess Grace had spent years imagining for their eldest daughter. The Parisian press had already given him a nickname. They called him the Emperor of the Night. The reference was not to ambition. It was to his social habits, his appetite for parties, glamour, the company of beautiful women, and his complete lack of interest in anything resembling a conventional life. Grace and Rainier saw him clearly from the beginning. They opposed the relationship immediately. They tried to separate the couple by sending Caroline on a cultural tour to Ecuador. They made their concerns known privately and eventually publicly. They used every tool available to two of the most powerful parents in Europe to prevent their daughter from walking down the aisle with a man they believed would hurt her. Caroline walked down the aisle anyway. The wedding took place on the 28th of June, 1978 in Monaco. A civil ceremony one day, a religious ceremony the next. 800 guests attended. Hollywood stars and European royalty sat side by side in the pews. The photographs from that day show a young woman in an embroidered Marc Bohan for Dior gown with a floral headdress. She was busy smiling at the cameras with the particular brightness of someone who has won a battle and is not yet aware of what the victory will cost. The marriage lasted 2 years. It ended in October of 1980 with a divorce that confirmed everything Grace and Rainier had tried to warn their daughter about. Junot's infidelities had been poorly concealed. His professional life had not provided the stability his background suggested it would. The aristocratic lineage he had implied was not genuine. And the life he had promised Caroline, one of freedom, adventure, and escape from the suffocating weight of royal expectation, had turned out to be something far less than advertised. The divorce was civil. The Catholic annulment took longer. The church did not grant it until 1992, 14 years after the wedding. For a woman raised in the Catholic faith in a Catholic principality, that delay was not merely administrative. It was a weight she carried through everything that followed, including her civil marriage to Stefano Casiraghi in 1983. Junot moved on. He married a woman named Nina Wendelbo Larsen in 1987. They had 3 children together before separating in 1997. He later had a 4th child, a daughter named Chloe, in 2005 with a Swedish model. He spent his later years between Paris and Madrid, staying close to his children and gradually fading from the kind of celebrity coverage that had made him famous in the first place. Then, on the 8th of January, 2026, he died in Madrid, peacefully surrounded by family. He was 85 years old. His daughter Victoria announced it on social media with a message that was beautiful in its simplicity. She called him her legendary Papa. She said there were no adequate words. To her, the family would continue to smile and laugh the way he would have wanted. Caroline said nothing publicly. The palace said nothing. There was no statement from Monaco and no acknowledgement from the Grimaldi family. No official condolence from the woman who had once stood beside him in a Dior gown in front of 800 people and promised to spend her life with him. That silence was not coldness. It was the appropriate response of a woman who had closed that chapter long ago and had no public obligation to reopen it. But privately, the death of your first husband, the first man you ever chose for yourself, is simply nothing. It is always something. Even when everything between you ended 46 years ago, even when the love that replaced it was so much greater than the first marriage looks, from a distance, like little more than a prologue, that greater love was already waiting, just a few years away, in a Monaco disco, with a blonde Italian and a laugh that nobody who heard it ever forgot. The love she lost, too soon. Stefano Casiraghi was not supposed to be in a serious relationship. That is the detail most accounts of their love story skip past too quickly. When Caroline met him in 1982 at a Monte Carlo disco, she was still carrying the bruises of the Junot marriage. The divorce had been finalized 2 years earlier. The Catholic annulment was still a decade away. She was 25 years old, newly motherless, and shouldering her father's grief alongside her own. Busy performing the duties of Monaco's First Lady, while privately wondering whether she would ever have a life that belonged entirely to herself. Stefano was 22, the son of a wealthy Italian industrialist. Blonde, physical, genuinely warm in a way that people who knew him consistently describe as rare. He was not a man performing a charm. He was simply naturally someone who made the people around him feel better about being alive. Caroline fell completely. They married in a quiet civil ceremony on the 29th of December, 1983. There was no grand spectacle this time. No 800 guests. No Hollywood stars in the pews. The palace announced it 10 days before it happened, which was barely enough time for the press to arrive. It was in every way the opposite of the Junot wedding, and that contrast was entirely intentional. This was not a performance. It was a choice. 3 children followed in quick succession. Andrea was born on the 8th of June, 1984. Charlotte arrived on the 3rd of August, 1986. Pierre came on the 5th of September, 1987. In the space of 3 years, Caroline had built the family she had always wanted, a real one and a private one. A life inside the palace walls that for the first time felt like it belonged to her rather than to the principality. People who observed the family during those years consistently described the same thing. A couple who were genuinely in love, not the performed affection of 2 people maintaining a royal image, but the real, visible ease of 2 people who liked each other. They made each other laugh and had built something they both intended to protect. Stefano was also fearless in ways that Caroline found thrilling, and the people around him sometimes found it alarming. He raced speedboats professionally and competed at the highest level of offshore powerboat racing, a sport that sat somewhere between motor racing and something considerably more dangerous. He won the Class 1 World Powerboat Championship. He was defending that title in October of 1990 when everything changed. The 3rd of October, 1990, was a Wednesday. The World Offshore Championships were being held off the coast of Monaco. Stefano was competing in his catamaran, the Pino di Pino, alongside his co-pilot Patrice Innocenti. Earlier in the race, the 2 men had stopped to rescue another competitor whose boat had caught fire. The act of stopping had cost them time. Witnesses said they were pushing hard to make it back when the boat hit a large wave at full speed. The catamaran flipped. Innocenti was ejected and survived. Stefano remained strapped into the cockpit as the boat came down with its full force on top of him. Fellow racer Alberto Brombin reached the wreckage first. He grabbed Stefano's hand and tried to pull him free. The life jacket pulled Brombin back. Stefano's fingers slipped from his. He was 30 years old. Caroline was in Paris when she was told. She left immediately, dressed in black mourning clothes, before boarding the flight back to Monaco. She arrived with 3 children who did not yet know that their father was not coming home. Andrea was 6, Charlotte was 4, Pierre was 3. She sat them down and told them. She said, according to accounts from people close to the family, that Daddy would not be coming back, that he had gone to be with Jesus in heaven, and they would all have to look after one another now. She was 33 years old. She had lost her mother 8 years earlier and survived a failed marriage. She had built a real life from scratch with a man she genuinely loved. And now that man was gone in a race off the coast of the principality where she had been born. He left her with 3 small children and a grief so complete that people who were around her in the months that followed said they were not sure she would come back from it. She came back. She always came back. That is the thing about Princess Caroline that gets lost inside the catalog of loss. She never stopped. She never disappeared. She grieved, kept going, and she showed up. She did what the palace required and raised her children. But something shifted after Stefano died. Something permanent. The woman who emerged from that grief was quieter, more guarded, more careful about what she allowed herself to want. As if she had learned, twice now, that the things she loved most were the things most likely to be taken from her without warning. And the next man who entered her life would only confirm that lesson in an entirely different and far slower way. The marriage that exists. On paper. After Stefano died, Caroline did not rush. She raised her 3 children and fulfilled her duties. She buried her father's grief alongside her own. Caroline ran the foundations, attended the galas, and represented Monaco at functions requiring a Grimaldi presence and a Grimaldi composure. She was, by every visible account, exactly what the principality needed her to be. For 8 years, she did this alone. Then in 1999, she married for the 3rd time. The man was Prince Ernst August of Hanover, Duke of Brunswick, the head of the House of Hanover, a German prince, old European nobility. The kind of title that sounded on paper like exactly the sort of match that Grace and Rainier had always imagined for their eldest daughter. The wedding took place on the 23rd of January, 1999. It was Caroline's birthday. She turned 42 that day. The ceremony was held in Monaco. It was private by the standards of royal weddings. The photographs showed a woman who looked beautiful and composed, in a way that is difficult to fully articulate, slightly unreachable. as if she were present for the event without being entirely inside it. What nobody outside the palace fully understood at the time was how quickly the marriage began to fracture. Ernst August was not an easy man. That is the diplomatic version. The less diplomatic version is that his public behavior over the years produced a series of incidents that would have ended his career. He was caught on camera urinating on the German pavilion at a world exhibition in Hanover, and was involved in physical altercations that generated police reports. He faced legal proceedings in multiple countries. He was photographed in circumstances that the palace found difficult to explain and impossible to defend. Caroline said almost nothing publicly about any of it. That silence was, by this point in her life, a practiced skill. She had learned from the Junot years that public comment on private pain only extends the pain by giving it a larger audience. She had learned from the Stefano years that the deepest grief is the kind that cannot be adequately expressed in words anyway. And she had learned from watching her father absorb the death of Grace Kelly with quiet devastation that the Grimaldi way of surviving is to keep moving and say as little as possible about what it costs. So, she kept moving. But the marriage in any meaningful sense was over almost before it had properly begun. By the early 2000s, Ernst August and Caroline were living separately. He remained in Germany. She remained in Monaco. They did not divorce. The Catholic Church and the Grimaldi family's position on marriage made a clean legal separation, complicated in ways that went beyond the personal. And so, the marriage continued on paper, frozen in a state that was neither fully intact nor fully dissolved for decade after decade. In 2026, that is still the situation. They are still technically married. They have not lived as a couple for the better part of 25 years. Their only child together, Princess Alexandra of Hanover, was born in 1999, the same year as the wedding. Alexandra is now 26 years old. She recently moved into her first apartment in Los Angeles with her longtime partner, a man named Ben Sylvester Stroutman, leaving Caroline alone in Monaco in a way she has not been since her children were small. The loneliness in that picture is not hard to see. A woman who has been separated from her third husband for most of their marriage, whose eldest children are grown with families of their own, whose youngest child has just moved to another continent, who has outlived a mother, a husband she adored, and now a first husband she once defied her parents to marry. She has spent decades serving as Monaco's cultural figurehead, while carrying a private life that has demanded more of her than most people will ever be asked to give. There is a version of Princess Caroline's story that gets told as a fairy tale gone slightly wrong. A princess who made some poor romantic choices, suffered some bad luck, and carried on admirably. That version is too small for what she has actually lived. The full version is not a fairy tale at all. It is something harder and more honest. Something in many ways more remarkable than anything a fairy tale could contain. And at 69 years old, still showing up, running the foundations, and standing on the palace steps with her grandchildren on National Day. She is living the final chapters of it. Whether they will be lighter than what came before is the question nobody can answer yet. What 69 looks like. After everything. There is a photograph that circulates whenever Monaco hosts a major public event. Princess Caroline is standing on the palace steps, surrounded by grandchildren, dressed impeccably, smiling with the particular warmth of a woman who has earned that smile through things no photograph can contain. It is a beautiful image. It is also, if you know the full story behind it, one of the most quietly remarkable images in the history of European royalty. This is the woman standing in that photograph, a girl who grew up in the shadow of the most famous mother in the world. She was told, from the moment she was old enough to understand it, that her life belonged first to Monaco and second to herself. A young woman who defied that expectation by choosing a man her parents warned her against, and paid for that choice publicly and painfully. A daughter who lost her mother on a cliff road when she was 25 and stepped into her role the following week because the palace schedule did not pause for grief. A widow at 33, 3 children under 7. A grief so total that people who witnessed it quietly wondered if she would survive it whole. She did. She raised Andrea, Charlotte, and Pierre. She watched them build lives and families of their own. Andrea has 3 children. Charlotte has 2. Pierre has 3. In October of 2025, a new grandchild arrived, a baby girl named Bianca Caroline. Caroline became a grandmother for the 8th time. Her youngest child, Alexandra, has moved to Los Angeles, beginning her own independent life with the man she has loved for a decade. The house is quieter now than it has been in years. And in January of 2026, 8 days before her 69th birthday, the first man she ever chose for herself died peacefully in Madrid. Philippe Junot, 85 years old, surrounded by his children, gone. She said nothing. The palace said nothing. But somewhere in Monaco, a woman who has outlived more chapters of her own story than anyone should have to, absorbed one more quiet loss and kept going. That is the detail that matters most about Princess Caroline in 2026. Not the titles or the foundations, not the cultural appointments, the charity galas, or the historic orchestra announcements. What matters most is the keeping going, the showing up, the decision made over and over again across 6 decades to remain present for a life that has taken more than its share. Grace Kelly raised her daughter to believe that duty came before desire, that what you had to do always came before what you wanted to do. Caroline has lived that instruction more faithfully than even Grace could have anticipated. The fairy tale her mother stepped into in 1956 did not survive contact with reality, but the daughter it produced did. And at 69, she is still here. Princess Caroline of Monaco was born into a story the world decided was a fairy tale. She has spent 69 years living the truth of it. The losses are real, the grief is real. The woman who absorbed all of it and kept standing is more remarkable than any fairy tale ever written. She is still standing. That is enough.